Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You have reached the No Name Cinema Society, a film review show that does a deep dive on movies, discussing these films just a little bit deeper than your average review show. It is Monday, July 16th, and it's time for our Indie Spotlight episodes, in which we look back at indie films from 5 years ago. And tonight we've got a big one. We've got the Palme d'Or winner from 2013. Hello, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here this evening, and I'm giving the fans what they want. They want more chest hair out of me, so I'm supplying that for the fans here this evening. As you can probably see, I am back in Astoria, New York. I'm drinking some Two Hearted Ale once again. So cheers all to you guys out there. I'm going to be in New York for the next bunch of episodes. This is our 49th series of episodes. And so we're excited to get inch closer and closer to the big 5-0. And who's been with me for a lot of those episodes is a lesbian artist who combs the high schools with a candy bar and a lasso, drunk Davie.
Wow. Okay. Alrighty.
And ladies and gentlemen, our other host this evening is a confused student struggling with his sexuality. Otavio is back, live from Brazil.
Yes, it's late at night here, so I'm here with my pajamas. Very stylish.
So good.
It's a panda.
So let me talk about this, our 49 series of episodes. Here's the schedule. On Wednesday, July 11th, we had our current feature, which was Ant-Man and the Wasp. Today, of course, is Monday, July 16th, and we're doing our Indie Spotlight, Blue is the Warmest Color. On Thursday, July 19th, we have our classic movie discussion, which is the 1990 film Pump Up the Volume, directed by Alan Moyle. And on next Monday, July 23rd, we have our 33rd Sound Off, in which we're going to play the movie game. I'm going to have an obscure movie discovery, and Davey has assigned me to count down the top 5 angry youth films based on our discussion of Pump Up the Volume. So that's our schedule for coming episodes. Refocusing on the Indie Spotlight here. Now, as I've said, we've been looking at films from 2013, indie films from 2013. I think this is our third one that we've done from 2013 this year. And I tend to do them, especially if I'm the one recommending them, I tend to do them in my preferential order. But I do want to point out that there is one that we have not done this year that is from 2013. And that's because we already did it. And it was my favorite film of 2013. And Davey might remember, when we first started the show, we hadn't figured out this format in terms of how to do the Indie Spotlights. We were sort of picking them from random before we came up with the idea of doing them from 5 years ago to give them more of a structure. Do you remember that, Davey? We're sort of all over the place.
Yeah, I think I might even remember what movie it was.
Ooh.
Yeah. Is it The Hunt?
It is The Hunt, yes. Some fans have mentioned, what about The Hunt? I'm like, well, technically we already did The Hunt. It didn't feel like it was something we ought to redo. We discussed it in episode 4, in which we also discussed the film Run All Night. That was before we split up the shows. It is probably the best, all the Indie Spotlights that we're going to talk about from 2013. But The Hunt did not win the Palme d'Or in 2013. This film did. And our trivia for Blue is the Warmest Color is that we were going to travel back to, cinematically speaking, of course, to watch a film so racy that even France pulled it from many theaters. In fact, the French nominating committee refused to enter it for the American Academy Awards. It probably would have won the Best Foreign Language Oscar. Instead, the Italian film The Great Beauty won over The Hunt, incidentally. The Hunt was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film and lost to The Great Beauty from the same director as Youth, Sorrentino, I believe. And the other thing about Blue is the Warmest Color is here in New York, the film theater, the IFC Center, famously refused to acknowledge the NC-17 rating, feeling it was an important enough film that they felt like kids should see it. So that was kind of a controversial decision here in New York. So that's your trivia tidbit, guys, for Blue is the Warmest Color. Is everybody ready for a summary?
Sure, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Summary time is up. Blue is the Warmest Color. Adele is a junior in high school who meets the slightly older Emma, a lesbian in art school with dyed blue hair. Emma opens up Adele to philosophy, existentialism, and homosexuality. Their affair blossoms into a full-blown relationship as they try to navigate the trials and tribulations of growing up and exploring your sexuality in modern France. Guys, how was that summary?
Spot on, man.
Apt?
Yes, definitely.
All right, good. I get nervous with the summaries. It's not my, bag generally, but I feel good. So this film is my recommendation. As Davey likes to say, I like them long. And this is a 3-hour movie. And in the last Indie Spotlight, I may have mentioned that I named Juno Temple my Best Supporting Actress of 2013 for her work in Afternoon Delight, which is the last indie we talked about. My choice for Best Actress of 2013 was actually from this film, Adele Exarchopoulos for Blue is the Warmest Color, who was 19 at the time of filming. I think all the performances in this film are beautiful, evocative, and three-dimensional, so we have to give a lot of credit to the choices of the mad mastermind behind it all, Abdulatif Koushish. Its detailed direction, both in terms of visual choices and performance guidance. Fascinating, character-driven exploration of modern sexuality. It was a top 10 film for me in 2013. Gentlemen, it was a big film when it came out. It was very controversial. Had you guys heard about it before being forced to watch it?
I just looked into it when I saw that you were putting it on the list, and I saw that it won the Palme d'Or, so I was interested.
Okay, all right, but you had not heard about it in 2013?
No.
Otavio, had you heard about it prior to watching it?
Yeah. I guess it kind of made a big splash here in Brazil. We had a big wave of, people dyeing their hair blue. It was kind of like a meme between people. And I guess it was a movie that really, shook people.
Let's do opening thoughts. I am going to let Davey go first because we had 2 consecutive, very realistic films in the last 2 Indie Spotlights. And Davey didn't like either of them. And that and the fact that this movie is 3 hours means Davey was ready to hate it before he watched it. Davey, what did you think of this movie?
The positives outweigh the negatives, but I have quibbles.
Okay, that's better than I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to lie. And now, as soon as I don't know why hosts feel like they need to do this. As soon as they watch the movie, Otavio sent me a message like he really had something to say. Can you tell me what that message said?
It's such a sad movie. It's one of the saddest movies I've seen in the late few years. He
felt it was sad, and we'll open up a can of worms on that. Obviously I really liked it as well. I feel like the main reason, though, as much as I talked about the performances, I think the direction was outstanding. And we'll talk about some of the controversy behind the director momentarily. But in terms of the actual stuff on the screen, the art, I feel like he manages to merge verisimilitude and lyricism in a stunning, evocative way. And what I mean by that, beautiful images without any sense of heightened reality. Something like Drive, for example, would be something that had a heightened reality. This movie feels very much like real world without ever losing that cinematicness. Do you guys at least agree with that?
I thought the direction was good for the most part.
The quibbles do not seem to take place within the realm of direction. The other thing that I liked about it is the shot choices. In the last Indie Spotlight about Afternoon Delight, one of the hosts, not Davey, complained about how tight the shots were on the main character at times, even suggesting that the actress edited it herself. And I think we have that again here. Koushish plays a good portion of the movie in very tight close-ups of Adele, allowing us to decipher every nuance the actor is providing. And quite frankly, why wouldn't you with a performance that good? Do you guys feel like it was too tight? What do you think about the shots?
It didn't bother me at all. Compared to what we saw in Mrs. Miniver, for example, when we had, extreme close-ups, I didn't feel that at all here. I felt it was pretty natural.
You still got a feel for the setting, and there were enough wide shots to make it feel natural.
Absolutely, and I was just sort of leading into that because as long as the movie is, it never feels too long to me. I mean, I feel like he mixes in enough informative wides that we always have a sense of the place in the environment. And I don't feel like the camera lingers on any one shot for too long. For such a long movie, I think the pace is actually pretty brisk. That sounds like something Davey might agree with.
It's a quick 3. It really feels long, but it could have been a lot worse. I was prepared for a lot worse, put it that way.
I feel good. I feel justified. Otavio, what do you think about the pace of the movie?
It felt natural. I didn't think it felt like 3 hours long, and I think that's because there's not a lot of information jammed into those 3 hours. The movie gives you time to really digest what's happening, so it feels pretty natural.
Yeah, and I mean, and it really, makes the audience work, and not necessarily a bad way. It sort of, presents the information and allows you to sort of interpret at your own pace. Davey makes fun of me for it, but it's really my kind of movie. I think another thing from a directorial point of view is, the result of all these choices that he's making is complete immersion into the mind and heart of our main character. And it's a very rare accomplishment, I think, for a film to put us so thoroughly, so deeply inside a character's experience. I think we feel every slight that she feels, everything that's happening from point A to point B, like it feels so intense and palpable.
Yeah, that's why I felt so sad about it. It's just for getting screwed over by life over and over.
There's some high points as well. Did it feel unnaturally sad? Because I mean, like a movie that's coming up on a classic down the line is a film called Monsters Ball, and that's a movie that I feel like is unnaturally sad. Like it almost like piles it on in a very uncomfortable way, and I don't feel that here. I feel like everything is happening in a way that feels like life, the trials and tribulations that we all experience.
I think that's what makes it so depressing, is that it feels like life.
Exactly. It seems real. It seems like something that would actually happen, like, for example, one of the saddest movies I've ever saw and unnerving movies I've ever saw, and I would never want to watch it again, it's Blindness. Have you ever saw that one?
Oh, sure. I saw Blindness. I named Julianne Moore Best Actress of 2008 for Blindness.
So it's a horrible movie, but, it's a fiction thing. Well, this movie, stories like that are happening, all the time around you.
So have we gotten to the thing that makes it sad for you is how real it feels? Like, so the director's attempt of verisimilitude, affected you so deeply that you were emotionally moved. Is it a good sad feeling, or is it a movie like Blindness you'll never watch again?
Well, to me, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Freedom is Blue.
I don't know that movie.
From the Three Colors, Freedom is Blue.
Oh, blue, red, and white. Kozlovsky. Yes.
Exactly. It's just a story that wants to show me how life can be sad. And I'm not really sure if I like that, because I know that life can be sad.
You don't feel like there was moments of joy and happiness too, especially during the high point of their relationship?
Yeah, there are, but I mean, I'm trying to get to a point in my life when I look to the bright side of stuff, especially in relationships. And when I see a movie like this, it seems a little bit fatalistic. Interpersonal relationships are tending to failure over time, over simple stuff.
I, for one, saw hope at the end of the movie. One person that's the opposite of you and will never look at the positive side of things is Davie. So let's see how he responds to that.
You hit it on the head, Otavio. I'm trying to become a person that looks on the bright side of things with relationships too, but I've never been a person.
That will be an accomplishment if he.
When the relationship's over and it's all gone south, I never feel like it was worth it.
That is not looking at the positive side of things at all. That's the opposite. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much. Rabbit Hole, by the way, a movie that an indie spotlight we did in episode 17.2. but point being that, don't you feel like you've been in this relationship with someone? Don't you feel that, like, okay, it takes a believe me, you know me, I went through it too, but it takes like a beat to get over it. But then you're like, okay, this is why this person is in my life. This is what this person taught me. You grow from that.
I do all that. I say all that, but I feel like I'm just trying to make myself feel better.
You don't think it's true that, like...
It is true. You learn from these things.
The problem here is that I don't think that Adele learned anything. She discovered that she was a lesbian, and she discovered a beautiful part of her life with Emma. And then things went wrong, and apparently she can't move on. She's been dragging that guilt and that problem in her life for probably a couple of years.
It's not that she learned that she was a lesbian. I think that she learned that there aren't, and this is a T word, foreshadowing. I think that she learned that there's not as many rules when it comes to sexuality. It's a broader spectrum than she had anticipated. I feel like she never loses her attraction to men. Her affair that causes the problems to begin with was an anomaly. And I think if that one guy that she met at the party, I think she would have liked to go out with him and hang out with him potentially down the line. While it's true that Emma hit her at a certain point in time in her life, that it will always leave an impression. I don't think that means she's scarred for life. I mean, at the end of the movie, what is she, 23 years old?
Yeah.
Now, is there anything about the direction that is part of your quibbles before I get into some of the controversy?
Yeah, I think, though, it's probably around the controversy.
Do you want me to start the controversy first, and then
you know what? We can do that. We can do that.
All right. So the issue with this, did you research this already, Davie?
No.
So the controversy is when the film came out. Well, I mean, I will start saying the last two indies that we talked about. We achieved a similar sense of verisimilitude, and that's Spectacular Now and Afternoon Delight. And directors James Ponsoldt and Jill Soloway, respectively, achieved their sense of verisimilitude by creating an actor-friendly environment. Abdulatif Kechiche did the absolute opposite. He was known as a tyrant on set, supposedly frequently berating and humiliating his actors to get more of a performance out of them. And the controversy came out in Cannes, in which the two actresses, who both tied for Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival that year, they spoke out against the director though they acknowledged how good the results were. And throughout the 2013, there was a war of words between the actresses and the director, each berating the other. And in the same breath, explaining how much they hate the director, they would also say how much he's France's greatest director, and sort of raises the question, what price glory? And of course, they felt there's an 8-minute, no, it's actually, I timed it was more like 7-minute lesbian sex scene, and neither woman is a lesbian in real life, supposedly. They felt like they were making porn. They were uncomfortable. I don't know how much it shows in the scene. It doesn't show to me, but they were, very unhappy with it. And they shot that scene for weeks. Imagine that. Don't forget that Adele, at the time, Exarchopoulos, was 19 years old. For all that Kashish brings to the table from an artist's point of view, he's got this Oliver Stone kind of tyrannical quality. Does that stain the art somehow? Does that make you feel worse about it? Is that sort of one of your quibbles?
I didn't know about the stuff you just said, actually. So I just thought that they were making porn. I mean, it goes beyond serving the narrative, and I don't know. I think that it kind of detracts, I think, from the movie. It's kind of just a novelty.
Your issue is this sex scene itself, the 7-minute sex scene.
Yeah, I think it's too much. I think that the sex scenes in general are overdone.
I told you not to watch it on a plane in advance, right?
I did not do. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, good. I will say though, I'm going to have a counter argument, at least as far as the sex scene. And this is not condone Kashish on set behavior. Right. Not my style. But what I will say in terms of the sex scene is I do feel like this is a film primarily about the discovery of sexuality. And so I do think that now I probably wouldn't have made it 7 minutes. So, like the length of it maybe is an issue, but discovering, especially your first time with the woman, and I mean, we also see her first time with a man, I guess, too, but it is important, I think, in a situation where we're with this character so deeply, so intimately. I said the word immersion. I did feel like it was important to get a full sense of that. Like, I see the artistic choice to keep us with the characters. And one of the major themes, I think, is sexual discovery. At least part of that scene was important. Otavio, you might want to be the tiebreaker here.
Well, I agree with Dave. And I do understand that it's necessary, but I felt bad with this movie 2 times. First time when I watched it, because I felt really sad. And then when I read a little bit about it, because when I heard about this movie, I thought it was made by a woman director, and with a couple of lesbian or at least bisexual girls. I thought this was an empowerment movie when I heard about it. And when I heard that it was a male director and that none of the actresses were lesbians, I thought that was completely uncalled for. A little bit maybe out of place, because it was too much, I think.
That's a tough thing, because like then you're saying, all right, so I can, as a director, and again, I would never do something 7-8 minutes long like that. But I mean, like, I can never make a lesbian sex scene because,
not saying that. The thing is that it was so long that I think that the movie became known, at least here in Brazil, quite a lot because of it.
And that was the case. That was the case here too. And yeah, I mean, like, I didn't mind the length when seeing it either time. It actually didn't feel like 7 minutes to me. But with that said, like, I don't know if I needed all 7 minutes to get the point, but I probably needed 3 or 4.
That's exactly the point. I think that this movie, it happened the same thing that I saw happen, for example, with The Nymphomaniac, with Irreversible. It becomes the movie with, that iconic scene. And I'm not really sure if that was the point of the movie, if he needed to get the attention in that kind of way, I do understand that it was necessary to show, but it felt like too much like he was going for a shock value.
I explained what my interpretation, what I thought his reasons were. It was an important point in this character's development for her to discover, to unleash this hidden part of her that she's suppressed. Their sexual tension had been building the whole movie up to that point. It was a scene of catharsis, so it needed to have some kind of epic quality to it. Maybe it was more than it needed to be. One thing that I did want to talk about screenplay-wise, because we have to get to the T word, because we've already spent so much time talking about Davie's personal life that we're almost out of time. I mean, screenplay-wise, I didn't feel like it was a scripted piece. It flows so naturally. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is the literature lessons that happen throughout the movie as a gimmick. Gimmick's probably not the word I'm looking for, is it cheapens it. I think it was a terrific roadmap for the metaphors and existential rumination of the movie. Do you guys remember those scenes?
I guess, and especially when they talk about philosophy, I think that there were a lot of content dropped in naturally within the movie that I really enjoyed.
But also in her classes, they were breaking down a book like The Life of Marianne, a famous French novel. And do you guys remember what the subtitle of this movie is?
What is it?
It's The Life of Adele.
Oh, sure.
So it comes from this idea of the life of Marianne. So there's this connection. And The Life of Marianne, by the way, was written in sections, fragmented, as this movie is. And it also deals with love at first sight. At one point, they talk about dangerous liaisons with her first boyfriend. And later in the movie, she says to Emma, "It's beyond my control," which is a direct quote from Dangerous Liaisons. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie or the play or read the book. These classes that she has, tend to give a foreshadowing in some cases or help us understand some of the metaphors of the movie. My favorite might be at the end where there's a poem called No Need that she's teaching actually to her first graders or something, but it still talks about how poems are meant to be felt. There's no need to understand. It's one of the final lines of the movie, and I thought that was really interesting coda for the movie to have. It seems like this didn't mean much to you guys during the course of the movie.
I think I was a little irritated by the reading the books in class. It was a little heavy-handed.
So you knew it was something, you just didn't.
I could read the subtitles. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. I don't know. I just seemed a little easy.
But it is a common thing to read those things aloud in class, I think.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It just seems like, hey, we're reading this book, and now it's going to happen in what? Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So you did feel the parallels with that were happening.
How could you not? I mean, like it's.
I thought I didn't think it was that heavy-handed. I thought it was sort of nicely done.
I just kind of the last poem. I just kind of got it now with you explaining, and I think.
There's it. So not that heavy-handed. All right, so it's time for the T word, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we talk about themes of a movie. It's Davie's least favorite section. It's the part of the show that makes our show different. We go a little bit deeper. We talked about it a little bit. One of the big things about this movie, to me, is I feel like it's about the limitations of society's view of sexuality. Like Del Toro's Oscar speech this past year, when Guillermo del Toro, when he won for The Shape of Water, he talked about borders between countries disappearing. Perhaps sexual borders are disappearing as well. In other words, there is no heterosexuality, there is no homosexuality, there is just sexuality. And I think that is one of the things that this movie makes me feel. Otavio, what do you think?
I do agree with that affirmation, but I don't really see if this movie makes a nod in that direction. I think it kind of segmentates more than say that it's a broader spectrum. I saw this maybe wrongly as an LGBTQI movie. I thought it was a little bit aggressive to be as democratic as you're making it sound. Maybe, at least to my eyes. I don't know.
Emma was one of the major relationships in her life. My impression of it is that Emma just happened to be a woman. The relationship would have gone in the same way even if Emma wasn't. You know what I mean? Like it felt like any other like the course of a relationship and the dynamics of that relationship could have just as easily been a heterosexual one. And so it didn't necessarily feel like it was an LGBT thing. It was about just two people. And I think I don't think that's a knock. I think that is a credit to the movie. Davey, you also think I'm off base?
It explores the idea that there are people that don't fit nicely into one particular label. In that stage of her life, she was looking to meet a woman.
Supposedly, seeing her in the street unlocked that door to some degree.
Her next relationship could easily be with a man, and could be with the man that they kept kind of hinting at.
Yeah, and my offshoot theme, though, along that same line, it leads directly back to Davey's personal life in the sense that, and also our last indie, because this same theme came up, is French films frequently do this. I do think this film sort of suggests the potential hypocrisy of monogamy and trying to force this concept of one person for your entire life on a society does more damage than it does good. Yeah, Otavio, you're on camera.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I felt that, Emma was really mean, because she, at least to my understanding, she was hitting on her ex. And she probably hooked up with her ex. and then she made something happen so she could blame Adele.
Which is a normal relationship. I mean, it's bad behavior, but a lot of people do that sort of thing.
They could just, get with other people. Whenever I see something, at least at this point, I'm 35. When I was 19, 23, or whatever. When I was that age, to me, it was really important that the person that I'm with would never hook up with anyone else. At this point in my life, I don't see that as a problem at all. If my wife comes up to me and say, I really want to hook up with that dude or that woman, and I'd say, okay, if it's something so important to you, go ahead.
The ladies out there, don't worry. He was talking about a hypothetical wife. Otavio's not actually married.
I am.
What?
I am married.
You are not married.
Yes.
I think he would know if he's married.
The things I discover on this show, and hearts are breaking all across the world out there. All our fans are dying now. Oh, Otavio.
And I think that's the point. I mean, when you decide to
break people's hearts across the world.
It's the dangers of monogamy when people aren't committed to it, or when I think that she went out and had an affair because she was. For two reasons. One, she was not getting
neglected. She was being taken for granted, which has happened in relationships all the time.
Taken for granted, but also I think that's the main one, is the first one. But I also think she suspected she was being cheated on as well. So
which was part of taking her for granted.
A conversation is the way to approach that, rather than having an affair.
Love advice from Drunk Davie, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to rephrase what I was saying to agree with Davie. I mean, no, not in that way. I mean, Dave has a point here. You have to understand the kind of relationship that you're in, and everyone needs to play by the same rules.
All the people in the relationship, not necessarily all the people in the world need to, or the
Exactly.
need to play by the same.
Exactly. So you need to agree upon the rules, and I think that it's important that you have the maturity to agree upon those rules and follow them. And I think what the movie shows is that the lack of maturity can lead to very sad, depressive, and hurting situations that if people just sat down and talked a little bit, it would spare them a lot of trouble.
I had another quibble that I think you'll like.
You have another quibble, Davie?
Yeah, it's the lighting. I thought the lighting there were certain times when I thought the lighting was obnoxiously noticeable. And I don't know.
Was it too bright, Davie? Tell me it was too bright.
It was too bright. I thought that their faces were like shining in that bar scene. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Also, when they're outside, they're like having a picnic or something like that, and that
on the bench when they're constantly backlit.
Yeah, the mixture of the sun and the light was awful. I didn't like that at all.
There's an ethereal quality to it that I liked. Certainly did have a note about the light issue. I don't remember it being too bright. Anything, Otavio?
No, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that escapes me from not being a technical person.
Neither is Davie, but
Yeah.
but if something is too bright, like that's one of our gags. That's why I made such a big deal about it, because he one of the things he frequently brings up is if something is too bright. That is one of his like six.
Like it's supposed to be a medieval castle glowing everywhere. Like that's.
It's a pet peeve of Davie's that he brings up from time to time. That so we give him a two. The other thing that one of the other ones, Otavio, is he's like, I really enjoyed the color palette, as if he heard someone else say that somewhere down the line.
That's a nice one. I'm gonna pick that up for me.
Yeah, it makes you sound intelligent. Anyway.
Where did I bring that out? I think it was Vertigo, and I stand with it.
The first, Vertigo is an amazing color palette, but Spotlight too, when you talked about the color palette being that of a newspaper.
Yes, well, I agree. It's a
you agree with yourself?
I do. That's such a good point by me.
I agree with the early 2016 version of myself. All right, guys, we're having too much fun. We better close it out. All right, so in our next indie, which is going to be in August sometime, we are going to continue our look at 2013 indies, and we're going to do another foreign film as our next indie spotlight. This time it's going to be a documentary, and this one takes on recent history as it goes behind the scenes of an event that started only 2 years prior. Our next show, by the way, is coming up in just a few days on Thursday. We're going to do the classic film Pump Up the Volume from 1990, starring Christian Slater. and that's coming up in just a few days. Classic movie discussion. In the meantime, gentlemen, say goodnight to our fans.
Good night,
everyone.
Subscribe, please.
Subscribe. But for now, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.